I don't think any of us ever envisaged where it would end up and to how, I suppose, how integral to the sort of market it would become.
Every single day, thousands of customers switch their supply.
I can't remember a time where you couldn't change energy supplier, which I think goes to show how embedded that's become in the energy market.
The work that was done back in the late 90s is still being felt through the industry today, really.
4 million households switch electricity each year in Great Britain. The MRA is the entity that you've never heard of that sits behind that.
Everyone was in what we call the PES era, where you were allocated your regional electricity distribution business and supply business are all the same thing.
Consumers didn't have choice around who provided their electricity, and this was all supplied through the local electricity board.
You would get your electricity bill and you could literally go into the shop on the high street and pay your electricity bill over the counter. The government at the time were privatising much of the assets of the country, and the electricity industry was one of those areas that were targeted.
Arrangements were led initially by the Pool Executive Committee, and it soon became apparent that for these arrangements to be effective, there should be a separate registration agreement. Hence the MRA was established.
The MRA code was implemented in '98 when the market was opening to competition, and the purpose of it was to sort of put the business rules in place and to support the industry systems that helped customer switching, so that customers could move from one competitive supplier to another one.
So you can imagine there was a lot of work to do in a relatively short amount of time actually to get everything interoperable in the timescales that were available right then. So there was a lot of work done, and MRA was one of those codes right at the beginning, which was at the forefront of opening up the market. Looking back to when the MRA was first envisaged and first designed, it was a mammoth task, and most of the people at the time believed we wouldn't be able to do it in the time. You now had 12 regional areas that were managed individually, now all having to work together. So I suppose the biggest challenge was actually getting a consensus view of how the market should work, and that took up much of the development time of how that would work.
Whilst initially there might have been some degree of tension between the parties represented on the Executive Committee, which I think was somewhat inevitable, things soon settled down. The governance of the MRA arrangements soon became well established and effective.
The MRA really, establishes a level playing field between suppliers. Customers shouldn't be experiencing widely different experiences if they decide to be with one supplier or another. The MRA has seen so much change over the last 21 years.
I think Echoes is one of the MRA's great success stories, one of the sort of first things that the MRA started to do.
The old telephone system was extremely slow and inefficient. If you needed to access data from multiple sources, it would involve multiple telephone calls to different parties. Echoes provides an interface to all of that data, so anyone needing to access it to resolve an issue can do so themselves quickly and efficiently. You have to remember, when this was introduced, this was a really great example of industry innovation at a time before the first iPhone had come out.
It's gradually evolved and become something now which is considerable in terms of both its size, its importance to the market, and how many users of it has.
The transition to Echoes 2 was really important for our organisation. All the benefits that has arisen with that, such as increased ability to search for multiple metering points, which has had a really positive impact within our operational teams.
In the last couple of years, we've started to build sort of API interfaces for energy switching sites and the like, so that they can actually plug into it, and for MRA parties, so that they can interface the system directly into their own systems and actually make it work much better for them and for the market. So yes.
The development of the MRA included the change process which was necessary right from day one to enable innovation. Areas that may not have been perfect on day one could be changed easily in the light of experience.
I joined the MRA probably back in 2012, so that was all around the time when the Green Deal scheme was being introduced. So that was a big period of change for the MRA.
It had to be delivered to both very challenging timescales that weren't driven by the industry but by government, and that implementation of it was a real challenge, I think, for Marasco, and yet actually something which they delivered very successfully.
The MRA has never really stood still as a code. It's always been there. It's always been available to change and changed with technology.
Some of the key areas of change within the MRA has come about with the faster switching programme, where we've seen switching timeframes reduced from on average 5 weeks to 21 calendar days. We've also seen objection processes reduce in timeframes.
Its change process can cope with urgent change. It can change things within a very short space of time if need be.
So we've also seen new processes added, such as the ability for the old supplier to withdraw registration.
Debt assignment protocol allow customers the opportunity to switch even if they've got a debt below a certain level. I think that's actually a very valuable change to the code.
Customers have gained real benefit from the arrangements that have been put in place to enable them to change supplier in a seamless fashion without problems.
I think digitisation of codes just reflects the way in which technology in general has evolved, both in the workplace and at home. Industry codes and businesses have to evolve to take that into account.
Energy governance, as it is today, was introduced at a time when the market was a lot smaller. Today, there are now over 70 suppliers in the market.
So if you look at the codes of today, they are paper-based codes, and everybody has to be able to abide by all the regulation contained within them. And the future model may be that we don't take that approach, and that each market participant's rules are bespoke to themselves.
There's no real excuse for the industry not to move in that direction. It makes no sense now that suppliers have to download various 100-page document and reading every single clause to work out if they need to worry about it or not. There's too many people engaging in the market for that model to continue.
The MRA will always be the first code to facilitate competition in the electricity market.
Whilst the MRA may not exist in the future, I think the lessons that we've learned and the innovative moves that have been made across the code landscape that are instigated by the MRA will always be the legacy of that code.
If I was to say which things should you be proud of, I would say it's how smoothly the change process works, how they work each day, every day, supporting customers switching electricity supplier in a seamless and successful way. It doesn't go wrong, but it works.
We've got an efficient, well-operating code that delivers every single day for thousands of customers.
Whilst we might not have the MRA in the future, I think we'll always have those lessons that we've learned, and there'll always be parts of the MRA that will still exist in future codes. There's a chance now for great innovation to happen again.